Hi, it's ChickenboneJohn here in the workshop, and we did make a central exhibition a couple of weeks ago in Birmingham at the NEC, and I just wanted to reflect about what we learnt there. We had a booth there and we were selling kits and so forth, but it was interesting to look at what else was on offer, and there were things like CNC software, laser burning machines, 3D printing, and there was the usual woodworking hand tools and machine tools and so forth. And I'd wondered if it might benefit us at ChickenboneJohn Guitars to get into any of this stuff. And on reflection, I thought it probably wasn't. Things like CNC, I did go to a lecture, a presentation, and seeing what they were doing. They were selling the software, but there were also hardware on show. There's a few things that occurred to me. Apart from the cost, the machine was, you're talking between £1,000 and £2,000 for these sort of entry-level CNC machines, and possibly another £1,000 for the software. Apart from that, and the learning curve, I wasn't convinced that it was the right thing to do. Thinking, why would you want, for example, CNC? It's consistency, repeatability, I suppose. Would you thinking it would increase your throughput, the speed, and so forth? And that's one thing that the speed, I don't think it's anywhere near, especially with that sort of hobby level stuff. Bearing in mind, I can carve a neck, I timed it 2.5 minutes. The whole thing, including sanding and so forth, I can probably do in 10 or 15 minutes. A CNC machine won't do that, certainly at the hobby level stuff. You'd have to go into the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, I think, to get the capacity. One thing was apparent, that the cutting head on the machine wasn't anything like as powerful as a conventional router. So for things like this, where we're going to be cutting F-holes, the machine would take a long time to actually do that, and you'd have to program it and all the rest of it. With this, all I need to do is drill a hole, drop the thing in, whiz round, and it takes about a minute to cut an F-hole, flip it. So the whole thing of, say, routing and drilling a top, at most it's a 5-minute job for us. So we can do plenty of those. We're now set up with this simple jig. So I think for CNCing boxes, not really worth it. Drilling holes and things, you've got a drill press to do that and a router. You could laser cut them, I suppose, but then same sort of thing. For doing necks, you need a much bigger bed, to actually carve a neck. That's sort of beyond the bed of the hobby. A lot of the hobby machines, they'll only do something like 450 or 600 at a pinch. You need something that's really got a meter capability to completely do that. Otherwise, then you're just doing a little bit of the neck and then having to shift it and so forth. Also with CNC, with just like a single head machine, it's doing all these aspects, and then you need somebody then to load the thing in, set it going. So it needs basically a machine attendant to do that. You can't just set it going, it'll, end of the day, it'll carve all these necks. That's why if you look at a lot of factories, they will often have multi-head machines. So the CNC thing, I don't think it's for us. We were thinking, could it possibly do little things like pickup surrounds and control plates, machined out of timber, or can we laser cut that? I suppose you could do, and some of these machines have got an interchangeable head. But again, it's the time it takes to do this. And I'm certain these machines you couldn't set off and leave running all day. You have to be on them, and the capability of them to run all day just won't be there. So that was one aspect, thinking, I don't think we're ready for CNC. We're still very much you know, like necks like this. We'll bandsaw them, but carve them by hand, sand them on a belt sander, things like putting the frets in. That's something in guitar factories that's not mechanised, it's still put in by hand. So we've compromised, and I think the thing is appropriate technology. If you're doing just like one-off F-holes, you can just drill it and use just a coping saw. If you're doing it multiple times, do like us, we can set up a jig, router it out, and that'll actually probably be as quick as a CNC machine, if not quicker. The other things we were looking at was perhaps laser burning for doing designs on boxes, which is another possibility, but again, your machine is not going to do it in a flash. It's going to take quite a long time. And the more I looked at the people who've got examples of this, and you know it's machine done. It's not got that thing about it being hand done, and you can see the imperfection and the sort of the hand of the person doing it. So I think that's not really what we're about, banging things out like that. If we needed it doing, I think I'd probably farm it out to a company who would do it for us, because we haven't got the time to faff about attending to a machine. And I say, and the sort of money we're talking about, it wouldn't work day in, day out faultlessly with no maintenance and so forth. So on that, because we were thinking about the wood burning, what we ended up doing, Anne went over to one of the pyrography places where you could have a go. She had a go at doing some wood burning and bought a proper outfit. Not cheap, I think it was about 120, 130 pounds, but it's a real McCoy for doing that sort of thing. So this is what we came back from Makers Central with. It's a pyrography machine, so it's like a little wood burning pen, and this is the first box that Anne's getting to grips with. So finding her feet with it, and I'm sure with a bit more practice it'll get a bit quicker. It'll be done by hand to our own design. We're not clip arting stuff like a lot of people are doing, and it'll be charged accordingly. So it's another option that we can present, as well as hand painting. So I think that's much more in our ethos to do it by hand, and yet we charge accordingly. It's not being banged out on a laser machine. So I'm not anti-technology, but I think it's about the level of appropriate technology. You know, I think there's just little things we do. As I say, this is all jigged up so we can route things efficiently. A couple of other things, you know, talking about fretting. We'll put things just into this simple jig, holds it, and then we just bang the frets in, flip the thing out. Job that it just helps us do the job a little bit more efficiently. And then, or if we want to press the frets in, you know, we can use the arbor press on really hard materials, or we can put them in and then just give them a final pull through that to make sure they're all seated properly. So I'm much more coming round to the thing is, after reflecting about it, say appropriate technology. So I'm not knocking CNC, but I don't think it's for us. I think what we'd have to invest in terms of the cost of the gear to do what we would want to do would be, as I say, tens if not hundreds of thousands of pounds. And we're very conservative in terms of, we don't borrow money, we don't run an overdraft. If we make some profit and we think we might plough that into a bit more machinery or more materials, but for the time being, for what we're doing, this sort of thing, carving stuff, we've got this down by hand and a few simple bits of machinery, you know, belt sander, bandsaw. It allows us to do this accurately and quickly. So yeah, so we're always thinking of the little bits and pieces of jigs or tools we can make that make the process more repeatable, so the quality and the precision is consistent. And I say, if you're thinking, why am I using CNC or these techniques? Oh, I've not talked about 3D printers. I don't think, again, that's where it might be handy for sort of making custom things like pickup bobbins and surrounds and so forth. But again, quite often we will need to order hundreds of these things. And the sort of thing that 3D printing, that's not great for repeatability. One-offs is the sort of thing. So that pickup surrounds, if we want steel pickup surrounds, and we often do, we just send out to the local laser cutting company, and they've got loads of these machines. These things are like £250,000, £500,000 a piece, and they'll zip them out for us, and that's it. We can come back and then polish them up by hand, finish everything by hand. The hard work's done, and we've not invested any money in all that equipment. That's somebody else's job. That's somebody else's job. So we can perhaps, it's very cost effective. That it costs us very little time. We whiz over in the van every few months, get a van load of stainless steel, and by coincidence, the people who make the boxes are 2 doors away. So we just go over there. It's 15 minutes ride in the van from the workshop. They're not being shipped halfway around the world. Come back here, and then we'll router our boxes, decorate and polish up the stainless steel and so forth. It's a more effective and appropriate use of the technology. So for hobbyists, I think it's a fun thing to do, to be able to maybe burn a design onto something or cut small components. But we are producing hundreds of guitars a year, hundreds of kits. We're not doing thousands. It's not as if we're sort of needing to do 100 necks a day or 100 necks a week. We're not at that level. So it's right, I think, for us to have the combination of just using things like the good old bandsaw. I've got, just been doing a bit of stuff. The hand plane, this is one of the most used tools in the workshop. The Stanley #4 hand plane. It's just so useful. Bench hook instead of a vise. Use that all the time for cutting timber. This is a piece of kit that's invaluable, which we've got a table saw, and it's dedicated for slotting fretboards, which we use with the templates. So we've got different templates for different scales. So that's the way we do it. So it was useful to visit Makers Central to see that. We came away thinking, I don't think it's for us. We're not big enough. We don't need. Well, I'll say if we could have a level repeatability, it'd be great. But the machinery that's on show just wouldn't give you rapid turnaround and repeatability. One of the bigger machines I saw, and that got about perhaps a metre square, all it was doing was carving out some lettering in a sheet of MDF, which in all honesty you could have done by hand with a router. And it was taking ages to do it. Yes, it would be very precise, but I felt these things are toys, almost toys, which is great as a hobby. But when a machine is going to take, I don't know, 5 minutes to engrave a design on a coaster, it's utterly no use to us. So for something to take maybe 2 minutes setup, 5 minutes cutting, routing a box out, something we can do in 2 minutes anyway. Same with the wood burning. I'm sure Anne's just started on this, and the first time it's going to take a long time, but with practice and repeatability we'll be able to hand do stuff. If it was done on the machine, you'd probably have to let it go for half an hour, 2 hours or whatever, and then you couldn't expect it to keep doing that all day. With a cheap machine, the thing will burn out. And even then, I think from briefly looking at it, we'd still be talking about spending maybe £5,000 or £6,000 on a decent laser burning machine, or one with cutting capability. It's a lot of money, And in some examples, I think if we wanted to do that, we may well end up just farm it out to somebody. The thing with laser cutting, you're going into things like birch ply. That's about all it's good for cutting. I think, you know, cutting through, oh, we've got mahogany, we've got this, that and the other. I'm not sure whether the results will be consistent. So then you're into, oh, well, you need to CNC route them out. The whole thing of loading up the machine, setting it up, centering it, pressing go, and maybe some parts you can have it repeated and will do you a dozen or 2 dozen. But most of the machines I saw didn't have the guts and the go to have to do much heavy duty stuff. Certainly not carving a neck. You wouldn't spend 1,500 quid and get a machine that would carve a neck like that, you know, in 5 minutes. It just wouldn't do it. It would take a long time to do it, and then you'd have to load the machine and do it, you know, flip it over so it carve the headstock. It's not going to do it all on one go. So as I say, I'm ranting on a little bit. I'm not anti it. It's a very good thing, but there is also the thought about, I think a lot of people want their guitars to be made by hand, and there's a couple of things I saw recently. There's a great old video of a guy called Jimmy D'Acquisto or D'Acquisto from, I think it's 1960s in New York. And at that time, he was making what was acknowledged the world's greatest jazz guitars. He had been apprenticed to John D'Angelico, or D'Angelico, whatever you want to call him. Again, at that time, he was making the world's best jazz guitars, making them for Les Paul, Chet Atkins, people like this. And to see him in the workshop, literally, you know, he was sweating to make this stuff. It's a classic, like, American New York thing. Little Italian guy with a white singlet, bending wood just on a hot tube, gluing things up, nailing things, using hand tools. And I'm thinking, when people are paying a lot of money for a guitar, I think that's the sort of thing they want, as opposed to another guitar manufacturer I saw recently, heard about them, based in Italy. I won't say the name, but it said, oh, handmade guitars. You watch the videos, they could have been making Formula One cars. It's beautiful, spotless workshop, not a scrap of sawdust, all machines, all the woodwork was CNC, and there's nothing wrong with that, because that gives them accuracy, consistency. But all the bodies, all the necks, everything was CNC'd, and they called their guitars handmade. Now, putting them together, you know, gluing things up and putting them in a press or and then putting the frets in, that needs to be done by hand. And the finishing and the final sanding, that has to be done by hand. But so that 90% of the guitar has been machined out, you can't call it handmade. And I say there's nothing wrong with machining. It does give you fantastic results. That's why the majority of the world's guitars are made on CNC machines, because it gives you quick, consistent results. But these aren't done on cheap machines. They're very, very expensive. You know, it's like the Fender custom shop stuff. They're not handmade. They're not even like the original Fenders, which were done on a pin router and a bandsaw. They're not done like that. The woods are selected and they're put through the same machines that the ordinary production stuff is done. You've got different software, different specs. So you've got wonderful pieces of wood, accurately cut, accurately reproduced. They end up with great guitars, but they are not handmade guitars. They're hand finished, they're hand assembled, but in my book, they're not handmade. You need to look at some small scale people who are doing that. Anyway, enough of my rant about what what's handmade and what's and not. So, you know, using one of these, is it handmade? Well, not really, because I should be using a saw. But my template, that was cut by hand. I just drilled and filed that. There's no machine doing this for me. The power's going through there, but it's as close to handmade as we can get it. It would take me a long time to do that by hand, probably half an hour to carve that out with a handsaw, which is fine if you're only making your own 1 or 2 guitars for your own amusement, or if you want to CNC or laser burn it out and invest the time and money to do that. But for us, the repeatability doesn't really work with the budget we've got, and it's nice to think we're hands-on as much as we can be. Okay, if you've got any comments, and if you think I'm talking a load of or whatever, do say. I'm not here to sort of say, yeah, handmade is infinitely better than a machine made or a CNC thing. It's just, I couldn't do without things like the bandsaw, my slotting jig. Yeah, we could do fretboards entirely by hand, but we do hundreds, if not thousands of these a year. I mean, we'll actually go in front of this and probably we might bang out 50 or 60 fretboards and in a session, which would be really time consuming if we did that by slotting it by hand. So I think it's appropriate technology. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, or hate and subscribe, or hate and don't subscribe, or comment. Let us know. It's always interesting to hear what people think. Okay, bye for now.